here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the American soul and R&B vocalist. It's the one and only Barrence Whitfield. Yes, he of Barrence Whitfield and the Savages, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. This is the interview. Just to say, there is a little section sort of midway through where I think his wife is in the kitchen preparing something. It does sound like she's whacking. I don't know what she's whacking, but she's doing something in the background, so don't worry about that little detail, but it gives it a little bit of a homely bit. And also a cat jumps on his lap, but you won't notice that at all. So look, you'll find out about all his life and his career, especially his kind of, being championed by Andy Kershaw and slightly John Peel as well. All those stories and much more. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get Barrence at the exciting subject of the early formative years. Barrence, it's over to you.
I grew up listening to a lot of soul music and, Little Richard and James Brown and Otis Redding. But I think what really set me off was, as I got older, because I was born in '55, so I'm the class of '55. So I'd have to say probably, in the '70s, I started listening to a lot of more David Bowie and late '60s Hendrix, Cream, and all that stuff, and then in the '70s, like I said, Bowie and believe it or not, Roxy Music, and then I got into a little bit of a prog thing between about '72 and like '77. So in between there, I was listening to everything from Genesis to ELP to Gentle Giant to all the British prog musics.
Wow.
And
That's
then,
it. So how did you come across that? Because it's such an English sound, isn't it? Prog rock. I mean, glam, you can see where, people got a bit excited, but prog was such a kind of twee English. I mean, to be honest, my brother, who was probably a little bit, he's a little bit younger than you, but he was into prog. He was 7 years older than me. And so I used to sneak into his room and listen to these prog records that you just mentioned. Yes, Genesis, Wishbone Ash, Barclay James Harvest, all that. And I was very fascinated with it. And, it was Mike Oldfield and Focus, a band called Focus, Hocus Pocus. And, the sleeves, the records, I'd never heard anything like it. I was only about 10 at the time. But, and I would listen to these religiously, and then sneak back out of his room without him knowing. So how did you come across prog rock at this point?
well, at that point, we had a great radio station in New York, WNEW FM, which was huge. It was it had a huge signal across Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. And New Jersey was kind of like the prog state. I mean, everybody I knew was listening to from early high school was listening to, like I said, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Genesis, Focus, as you mentioned, Gentle Giant. Then we were really getting heavy. I started listening to PFM from Italy and Amandul and just anything that was very sophisticated rock and roll, even Zappa at the time.
Oh yes.
We were listening to. So and because these bands would play live in New York, we just go over to New York and I must have saw, I don't know how many shows of prog between, like I said, 1972 and 77.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I saw a lot of live shows. Yes, I saw ELP, Gentle Giant about 5 or 6 times. Yes, 3 times. ELP 3 times. Focus once. They were okay. I mean,
yes.
But and Zappa a bunch of times. So we were being, introduced and just enamored from listening to all this prog rock through, like I said, through radio too. So
You'll be
you know.
excited this Christmas because I think Derek from Gentle Giant's just bringing his book out, isn't he? He's just been. I just did an interview with him quite recently for some
Really?
release, and I think he's got a book that is going to be coming out very soon. Derek, is his name Shulman?
Yeah,
Shulman?
Schulman. They were the
Yeah,
Schulman brothers. It
that's
was Derek
right.
Ray, and I forgot the other name.
And actually, I think Ray then went into the 80s as a producer because a lot of indie bands mentioned going and having Ray as their producer, and they had really nice experience with him because his wife would be in the kitchen, would come out and go, "Oh, this is a nice song." That's a with these young indie kids. So yeah, but Gentle Giant, that is amazing, really. Yeah, so put that on your Christmas wish list this year.
I'll have to. I'm going to have to look for that Schulman book because, like I said, I was as Ray Davies would say, I was a keen follower of fashion
You
when it.
were. But then the fashion would have been, I would have thought it would have been your sort of torturous singer-songwriters, Laurel Canyon, Neil Young, there was America, Horse with No Name, what was all that exciting stuff? And then you had the Eagles and that West Coast kind of slightly coke smoking kind of vibe.
Yeah, I wasn't really. I mean, I like Neil Young. No, did like Neil Young, but I wasn't like Eagles. And as far as close as I got to the singer songwriter thing, it didn't really happen until later on in the '80s when I really started listening to people like Tom Russell and Townes Van Zandt
Oh, yes.
and who else? Butch Hancock and Joe Ely and all those Texas guys and and other people. So you know what, my music horizons really exploded. I think really after my high school adolescence, as you want to call it.
So what
Listen,
was the first gig you went to, by the way? What was that kind of like the first concert?
the first gig. Well, I'll tell you the first soul gig I ever went to was 1967. James Brown
Wow.
uh, at the RKO Theater in Newark. That was a mind changing experience because I walking in, I was excited, and once the show started and he performed, I walked out like someone had taken a sledgehammer and just went, "You've awakened, boy. You've awakened, boy."
Yes.
And then my first rock show, I'd have to say, was believe it or not, at Shea Stadium in New York, where the Beatles played in '65. I saw Grand Funk Railroad, and the opening band for that show was a band from the UK called Humble Pie.
Oh, is that Steve Marriott?
Steve Marriott and Peter Frampton.
Oh, nice. That is quite a nice little number, isn't it? God,
I
that's
know, and the thing about it was they had what, five guys in their band, and Grand Funk had three. Grand Funk was louder than Humble Pie.
right. That was rocking, actually. I remember my brother also had those bands like Deep Purple, Black Sabbath creeping in. He didn't get into Led Zeppelin bizarrely, but those ones, and then people like Blue Oyster Cult started to appear in his record collection.
Yeah,
So did heavy metal also sort of feature a bit
a
in?
little bit. Like I said, I like Deep Purple. I did like Purple, Led Zeppelin, Sabbath, and there was this one band that only did, what did they do? They did like only two albums, but the first album was blew my mind. Was a band called Captain Beyond.
Oh, Captain Beyond, God.
Yeah, they were well. The lead singer was I think was his Rod Price. I think, was it Rod Price? No, something. His name was Price. He was the first lead singer for Deep Purple. Then it was a drummer named Bobby Caldwell who played with Johnny Winter, and a couple of guys from Iron Butterfly.
Right.
But they were kind of proggy in some ways, but real heavy. But they were a fantastic band. They recorded for Capricorn Records, and the first album is a killer, really is. And we used to play that a lot. We used to say, "Man, who is this Captain Beyond? Wow.
Yeah,
But
so
we never,
they were sort of one of your early super groups, weren't they, actually, with all this kind of lineup? But
yeah, they
God,
were kind of an early kind of super group, but it came out of nowhere too. If you should look them up
well,
and
yes, absolutely. I suppose you would have started to get bands like, is it Leonard Skinner, and
yeah, Leonard
people
Skinner
would have started to appear in life.
and who else? Well, Allman Brothers, of course, and see, because it was really funny. I was because of the radio station I was listening to, I was being exposed to so much music at a rapid fire pace. Till every time I heard something, I'd run to the record store and or I listened to it. They used to play the records in its entirety. They play the whole record on their radio shows. Some of these
Right.
DJs. So you'd get to hear the whole album, and you'd go, "Well, I heard the whole album. I think I like it. I'm gonna go out and buy it."
God, that's
Instead of going to the record shop and you look at the record and go, wonder what this sounds like. No listening
yes.
stations back then, so
That's handy because I made some terrible mistakes buying records that had been reviewed. I hadn't even heard them, but they were like, "This is amazing, record of the week." You know, you bought it and went, "Oh my God, I hate it," and I just spent £5 on it, and now I'm going to have to enjoy it because I need to get my money
well,
somehow.
I'll tell you, there's one record the only record I think I bought that I ever returned because I couldn't take it and I couldn't stand it was the John Lennon album, Two Virgins.
Right, that was true.
Oh my God. I heard that and I just said, I can't take this. I have to return this. And they said, is it defective? I said, yes, it is. Defective music.
God, yes, that was something else, wasn't it? So when you got to 16, which was like 71, did you then stay on at college and sort of go on to some form of higher education at this point?
I
Because
did. That's why I came up here to Boston. I did a little bit of Boston University here, but I ended up staying up here because I kind of like Boston, and it was being in New Jersey, where I was from. In order to get to the big city to experience what I was going to experience, I most like I used to take the train over to New York City, which would take about maybe not 45 minutes. But living in Boston, I was in the city itself. So it was my big experience of being in a big city, which was not as big as Boston, but to walk around and really, you know, breathe the city, learn about it and walk around and see different things and hear different things going on in Boston that I wouldn't have heard in New York or in New Jersey. So that was a real, real, real opening of my eyes once I got to Boston. And then the music scene kind of crept in a little bit, being exposed to at that particular time that was around the punk era. So
yes,
being introduced to bands in Boston like DMZ and not the neighborhoods, Nervous Eaters, and uh, there were so many bands going.
because this book came out a few years ago, didn't it? Which was this one about the Boston. This is the Boston one, isn't it? Where
Oh yeah, you have that.
I
Wow.
have that. Yes, this guy who was in the sort of the scene at that time, and he explained that a lot of bands coming over, especially, would sort of before New York would do Boston. So you got all the bands that would sort of come over, and you'd be listening to all those classics from Elvis Costello to Joe Jackson. I have to say, it's a lovely book. I'm sure you've already got it, but
Oh my God. Yeah,
it's
that was a great thing about being in the city, of course, because you had your little clubs, and because in Boston, you could go, and I'm sure in any town that had a scene at one time, when the scenes were big, you could go to a different club in one night throughout the week and you'd see different bands. So
yes.
you're always you were always exposed to whomever came in to tour or whoever live music, the local bands that were playing at the time. So it was a scene. I mean, it was a serious scene. And, like every night you'd go somewhere, so and so is playing at this club, you'd go to that club. Oh, by the way, while we're at it, so and so is playing like across town. So you'd get on a train across town, hit that club, watch that band. So by the end of the week, you were inundated by like music. And that's what really struck me and probably if anything made me stay into to Boston because at the time while I was in New Jersey I was in a little band, a little proggy band called Death Slayer.
Right.
and and they were, they played everything from like Genesis to Sparks to all this, and some a little bit of rock and roll, and then I stopped playing music for about a 5 year period to for studies and stuff. So I wasn't really into music, but once I got to Boston, I kind of slowly was listening to a lot of stuff, and I got back into it, and man, I saw so much music in the first few years of being in Boston till I was
Yes. Because
I
that
was like
was,
a drunk person.
I was going to say, there was the band who I interviewed, I think a member or two. That was the Human Sexual Response Band.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I used to see them too, yeah.
They had such a great lineup, but some great songs actually. And
Oh, yeah, Jackie Onassis.
Jackie Onassis is the classic. And actually, the drummer went on to work with Bob Mould of Husker Du fame, doing a
Yep,
band called Sugar, didn't he?
yes.
So that was, yes, there was quite a little sort of community. I think that happens with cities sometimes. There is that kind of network that kind of happens quite smoothly. So when did you start sort of finding your voice and thinking, I've had there's journalism. You worked in the record shop as well, didn't you, at that
Oh,
stage?
boy, yeah, back then, I think the first record shop I worked in, uh, once I hit Boston was a record shop called Strawberries, which was a franchise record store which was owned by a ruthless gangster mafia guy by the name of what was his name? Levy, Mo Levy, I think.
Oh, Morris Levy.
Yeah, Morris Levy.
Oh, because I've even got this book. I think he had a lot to do with John Lennon, didn't he? Morris Levy.
Yeah, yeah, he was what we called a shyster. He was a crook, man. He was only after money, and he pride himself on getting people's publishing rights so he can own it. That's how he got the publishing rights to Why Do Fools Fall in Love.
Right.
He got that through some devious shakedown of the who was the singer from the teenager Frankie Lyman.
Yes.
And then the story is, from what I heard, is Frankie Lyman at the time, young, he still was a young kid. He died a young kid, was a heroin addict, and he needed money to get that thing going. And he went to Morris Levy, and Morris said, "I'll give you the money." This is how he used to talk, because I did meet him. "I'll give you the money if you give me the rights, part of the rights of your song." And he wouldn't do that. So basically, couple of his goons hung him. He had an office on the 54th floor in New York City. So they basically took his legs, hung him upside down, and said, "Give us the rights or we drop you. If they find a dead junkie, it'll be you." So the next time you saw the "Why Do Fools Fall in Love," which I think Diana Ross did on one of her albums, and it was a little hit for her, and you saw Lyman and Levy.
Right. Yes. God, that's one way to negotiate your deal, isn't it? The
Yeah,
art of
he
the
was he
deal.
was he was a bad man, and he also, that's how he got really busted by putting up. He would go to warehouses and buy cutout records, and then at a really extravagant treat, not extravagant, but cheap price, and then put it in his stores. And you'd go in there and there'd be this big uh, section, and it's all cut out records with the album ends cut off the ends.
Oh, yes, we used to get that when we used to buy records in second-hand shops in the UK. You used to sort of see this.
Hmm.
I don't know. It was like, it almost seemed a bit more exciting to buy them because you thought there was some import, not because it was dodgy, but because it was going to be rare and no one else would have heard of them. So it gave it
But
a
there
certain
that was
kudos.
illegal
That was illegal.
here.
It was
It was
like-
illegal.
I
So,
was,
but
I was,
I worked at that store for a good while, and I learned a lot about the record industry and dealings with record executives. And oh man, I learned some shady stuff that
yes, I would imagine.
I don't want that part. I don't want to be that part. I don't want that part. All I want to do is play the music.
Yes. So how did then sort of as the 70s finished and then we got into the 80s, I mean, there would been the punk period and then post-punk and then there was that sort of new wave period in the UK. Obviously, our political landscape changed quite a lot. We had Thatcher that came in, you had Reagan. There was
Oh
like we had the Falkland War, miners crisis, and then Greenham Commons. So politically, things were all getting very sort of tense at that stage. But musically, it was brilliant. Then we started getting into, I suppose, a lot more independent music started to appear with labels that were
yes.
were happening. So how did you start to navigate your early 80s at this stage?
Well, about 83. At that time, I was, I was working at a retail store in Harvard Square called the Coop, very famous place, and I was store detective, and I kept going to the record division of the Coop, and a friend of mine worked there, of course, and what happened was I just started getting into it again. I said, "Man, here's the I want to do something. I want to do something." So finally, I got hooked up with a friend of mine who worked at another record store that I worked for a little bit called Nuggets in Kenmore Square, and he told me, "Hey, listen." He'd heard me singing in the record store. He said, "Oh, yeah, excuse me, you got a good voice, man. You know what? A friend of mine just left his band called the Liars, named Peter Greenberg, and he's looking for his dream is to find uh, a black singer who could sing rock and roll like Little Richard because he was really big into rhythm and blues of the 50s and 60s and stuff, and he was also into the garage stuff and all. So I finally met Peter. We talked on the phone. Then I went over his house, and he made a nice big bowl of chili. I mean, pot of chili, which was burning hot. And then we sat and listened to the music that he said, "Oh, this is the stuff I would love to cover," and because we're going to do a lot of old covers from 45s, rare 45s and stuff. So the first song he played me was a tune. Um, who was it by? It was a tune called "Mama Get the Hammer, Flies on the Baby's Head," and
Excellent.
I said, "Uh-oh, this sounds pretty wild." So he started playing me old Fats Domino's tunes and Smiley Lewis and all sorts of wild R&B stuff from the 50s and early 60s, and we just hit it off. Just he didn't have to really listen to me open my mouth. He just said, "You're the guy." And he took a shot at me. He'd already put together the band, and so that's when we started getting together all the material and started rehearsing. Because really, at that particular time, there weren't too many bands covering that kind of music
No,
and
not at all.
putting it, except for the Cramps maybe, and maybe a few other bands, the Blasters maybe, but putting it together in a kind of garagey rock kind of sound. And no one was doing it in Boston, definitely. So except for the liars were doing stuff like that. But so um, we got our sound together. It took us a while. I mean, we rehearsed our butts off, and I was lucky because I got to play with Peter, who was in the Liars, Phil Lanker, who was in the Liars, and Howie Ferguson, who was in a great band from Boston at the time called the Real Kids, and they were really known. So being, hooked up with those guys made it an interesting connection to
Yes.
to the Boston scene. They were going, "Who's this Barrence Whitfield?" And I changed my name, as you can see. My name. I say my maiden name is Barry White. That's my real name.
Yes.
But
But
I changed it to Barrence Whitfield because Barry White wasn't gonna go. It wasn't gonna go for it, or it was gonna sound weird. So what I did was I took Barrence from when in grade school, kids used to tease me and call me instead of call me Barry, they used to call me Barrence, like a rich kid, like little Richie Rich. And the Whitfield I got from Norman Whitfield from Motown fame.
right, there you
So I
go.
put the two together, and it sounded good, and everybody went, "Yeah, let's go with it. That sounds great." And there you go, Barrence Whitfield and the Savages, and we just started first. I think the first show we did was in '83. Opened up for the Del Fuegos at the time, and then
Brilliant.
and then the second show we did, we opened up for a blues artist, great guy by the name of Johnny Copeland, for Texas guy who was fantastic, great singer, and we did the show with them, and those two shows just like kind of blew the heads off of people in Boston, and next thing you know, all these journalists and writers of the newspapers in Boston was following us, saying, "Who is this Barrence Whitfield and the Savages? What do they bring to the table?" So, and that it just blew open like out of nowhere.
Yes, and did you enjoy touring? You went into the studio, did the album, obviously played Boston, but did you start going around the rest of the states at this time?
At the time with them, the first part of the Savages, we were going to New York and DC. I think we might have played Chicago once, but we stayed on the east, like the corner of the East Coast,
Yes.
playing. So, and the records was distributed by Rounder, so the records were getting around the country. So people were writing. Uh, Reviews on the record saying it's what a great wild rock and roll record, doing songs like Bip Bop Bip and the Georgia Slop and all this wild, and it was just knock them down, just raw kind of rock and roll, and people were really got interested. And then we when we played New York, we started playing with our friends, the A Bones, Billy and Miriam, who had a record label called Norton Records, which was huge at it was getting huge at the time, and they were good friends with Peter through his Liar and DMZ years. They were always interested in the Boston scene. So we played with them. My first gig in New York was at a place called Folk City, which was which Dylan played at. All the old folkies in the '60s played at this club. So that was our first club we played at in New York. Then we went down to the DC, and all of a sudden these like punk kids were coming out seeing us, and college kids, and we packed the few clubs down there and got a really good reputation and a good following down there. It was just unbelievable. These people would come out and dive off the stage, and they do a dance that I made up called the epileptic fit, where you'd go you dive on the floor and you'd go around in circles.
Right. Nice. Did it
And
catch
so
on?
Yeah, it caught on about every time we'd play, like 5 guys would just jump on the floor and just do that. And we go, they're doing the epileptic fit. And everybody's just going crazy. And we had such a wild show because I would be taken off a stage and be thrown around in the crowd, no one dropping me. And like that, I was doing the body surfing early and it was
Right.
just all they passed me around. People would put guys would put me on top of their shoulders and march me around while I'm singing, and it was just a wild show. It was just it wasn't violent. It was just electric. It was just like people, once they saw that, people just went completely bonkers. And by the end of the night, they'd be like so tired and sweaty. And after a session with the Savages, they said, "You have to see this act. It's they'll murder you."
Right, blimey. So once that album came out, obviously, it must have been exciting. Then you went on to Rounder Records for the second album, didn't you? Did the lineup
Yes.
then change of the band much at this stage?
No, it stayed. Well, Peter, though the first Savages stayed, and we did the second album, "Dig Yourself," which was highly successful, and that's when Kershaw really started getting into the fold, and he came over in '85, I think, to see us, and I think we did a show with the Fuegos, and funny at that show, it was so hot in the venue that night till I fainted on stage. So a bunch of my friends picked me up and carried me off the stage while the band was still playing. And so I went into the dressing room. Kershaw runs in. Is Barrence, are you all right? Are you all right? And I go, yeah, I just faint. It's so hot up on the stage. And he goes, this is great. They're wonderful. I'm going to bring this back to England. And yeah, I'm going to. He couldn't talk anymore. He was just out of breath. He said, what I've witnessed, I can't. So he went back to the UK and went on his show, played the whole album in its entirety, and he just kept telling about his experience with us and stuff. And people started calling the radio station, said, "Who is this Barrence Whitfield? When is he coming to England?" Blah. So finally, he said to himself, he called. He said, "I'm going to call. I'm going," because he was on the old gray whistle test at the time.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yes.
So he said, I'm going over and I'm going to film you guys. And he said, I'm going to bring over some people. We're going to film you and you're going to be on the old gray whistle test. So December of '85, we were on the old gray whistle test. And you could still see that interview. It's on YouTube. A little grainy, but you can still see it. And I think as I'm talking to at the end of the interview, asked me, "What is the most exciting things you want to see when you come to Britain," as he would call it? And I go, "Well, I've never been overseas before. It'd be great to go to England and look for Sade." He said, "You want to meet Sade when you come over to England?" I said, "If she's around, why don't you preface a request?" And so the camera got close to my face. I said, "Sade, I'm coming to England. You either going to be there or I'm going to come after you. Can I blow you a kiss?" And I blew her a kiss, and that was the end of the interview. So when I got to England in '86 from a booking agent that saw that, and they were excited to have us come over. Um, the first thing they asked me, "Are you still looking for Sade?" I said, "Yeah, see if you can get her to come to one of the shows."
Excellent.
Never
Nice.
got to meet her though, but
No.
it was a great opening for us because we got there and I'm talking to the NME, the Melody Maker, and they're all promoting me as the next Little Richard.
Blimey. And then, I mean, John Peel picks up a little bit, doesn't he? Because he plays a few of your tracks as well.
Yeah, he picks me up a little bit later. I mean, he Kershaw introduces me. We're in the BBC building, and he said, "I got someone you're gonna have to meet." And so we're walking upstairs, and we go into this little cubicle where there's tons of CDs, and on the floor, looking at all the CDs, was John Peel. And he goes, John, this is Barrence. He says, I've been hearing so much about you. It's great to have you here, blah, blah, blah. And we talked for a few minutes and stuff. But I didn't go on his show until a little bit later on, as we were, starting to play a lot in the UK, in London and stuff. And I, one night I was on his program, and he followed, Pale followed Kershaw, uh, and he said, "Listen, you and Barrence are in. Why don't you come over to my show and hang out for a little while?" So we went over to his show and hung out for a bit, and I really got to know Peel, and he actually spent the night one night. He came to see someone, and he stayed at Kershaw's place up in Crouch End, and he spent the night, and we stayed up to about 4 in the morning. I was almost like an interviewer myself, and we talked for hours about his influences, who he's seen, record collection, just it was one of the most I have to say thrilling times of my life to meet someone like John Peel. I mean, to get to talk to someone like that, and hang out with him, just like he's your buddy. It was
Yes.
it was the greatest thing in my life, and I have to say I'll never forget that. I'll never forget my time with Andy and Peel and all these other people who were champion to the Barrence Whitfield and the Savages band at the time. Anyway.
Yes. So when you on Rounder at that point, you bring out this kind of 5-track EP, Call of the Wild, don't you? Which is
Yeah, Call of the Wild, which was on Demon.
Demon Records, the famous Demon, and then you follow up with the next album, which again that feature quite a few tracks from that EP, and then
Yeah, it's called Ow Ow Ow. And that was with a different band of Savages because Peter and Phil and everyone, we had broken up for a little bit because Peter he wanted to put together a family, and he had already been playing music for a long time, so he wanted to retire from music for a little while. So I just happened to been able to hook up with a few other guys, a sax player by the name of Dave Scholl, who wrote the song "Stop Twisting My Arm," and he said, "I have a band that you might be interested in. Come down and see us play." So I went down to see them play, and I said, "Well, let's do it. Let's put it together." So we had to really rehearse these guys into being savages.
yes, did that feel
So
quite at that point? Did you feel like your music career had almost come and gone really quickly up to that point? So
up
knowing
to
that,
that point, well, it was, but it was like it didn't even come and go. It was like a kind of a delay for a bit to figure out what I'm going to do next and how I'm going to approach it and keep the Savages thing, because it was only we had only been together with Peter and Phil and Howie and Steve LeGreg was a saxophone player for only 3 years, so it was a short period.
yes,
So I didn't want to quit. I thought there was some momentum going, especially with hooking up and with Andy Kershaw and other people who were really interested in the band. So I wanted to keep it going. So it only the hiatus was only like 6 to 7 months. It wasn't even that long, and then I put together this band. So we really got right back out there, and it kind of shifted a little bit. It wasn't as garagey as the first band. It got a little bit, I won't say sophisticated, but more, we were doing a lot more instrumentals.
right.
Uh, and it changed a little bit, and plus I added keyboards to the band, so it did change a little bit with the organ and the piano. And
Did you play any festivals at that stage? Were you doing any? Because
uh,
can't
nothing. Well, there was some local festivals in the States, but we didn't really start doing festivals until after the new band got together and we started when we first got over to England. Then that next year of 1986, no, 87. We started getting into festivals. We started doing little bitty festivals here and there. But I was doing a lot of BBC sessions with Kershaw.
Yes,
That's for
you
sure.
did loads, didn't you? Were these all done at the Maid of Vale
Yep,
Studios?
they were done at the Maida Vale studio, and that was a great place to record music. It was so much history in that building, and when you get into the studio, you look above, and there's this plaque that says, "This is the place where Bing Crosby did his last studio recording." So we said, "Oh, here's some history right there." And but we also the one of the engineers that we worked with a lot was a guy named
D-
Dale
Dale Griffin.
Griffin. Yeah,
Yes, Mott the Hoople fame.
yeah. So he told us some stories on Mott the Hoople and stuff, but he was really good engineer, and he really did. We really had some great fun with him. So we were doing that, and we did some festivals, and I think we played. We did a lot of clubs. We did the 100 Club. We did the club in in Camden Town, Dingwalls.
Dingwalls, right? My God,
Yeah,
did the crowd absolutely take to you? And the band, did they sort of lap it up at this stage? Because I just say that because I know from listening to people like Peel and Kershaw that there was always something exciting about a band that was somewhere completely different rather than on your doorstep. So I just wondered if, like Jimi Hendrix, came to England, was became very famous quickly, didn't he? Did you have that same feeling, like being treated as some sort of royalty almost?
I did. It was just it was amazing how people like came towards me and talked to me, and they were excited that we were there, and they just liked the thought of someone bringing you real rock and roll music from the 50s and early 60s stuff, and they danced, and they just would ask me all sorts of questions, and why do you think Little Richard's this influence and that influence? And I'll give you an example. We played Dingwalls. I think Kershaw was uh, was one of the guys that put together the show at Dingwalls, and so I was at his house. Um, it was a day before the show. No, it was the night. It was the day of the show,
Right.
and I walk in. He goes, "Listen, there's a friend of mine you gotta meet. He's sitting in my front room." And I walk in, and it's Robin Hitchcock.
Right.
And so Robin, I meet him. I said, "Wow, this is great." He says, "Robin, you got to come to the show." He said, "I think I will come to the show. I've been hearing so much about you." And so he goes with the story of getting a phone call, Kershaw, from uh, from a guy by the name of Robert Plant,
Oh
and
yes.
his sister. um answers the phone and he goes, "Is Andy there?" He says, "Who's this?" He said, "Well, this is Robert Plant." She said, "Yeah, right." He says, "Sing me the first lines of Stairway to Heaven." And he did it over the phone, and she dropped the phone. She said, "Oh shit, it's Robert Plant." And she said, "No, Andy's not here, but call back in about 15, 20 minutes. He just went out." So he calls back, and Andy goes, "Hey, Robert, how are you?" He says, "That's great. I'm doing fine." He said, "Listen, I hear you're bringing over a guy who's playing tonight named Barrence Whitfield." Says, "Yeah, the Savages are playing at Dingwalls." And he says, "I have to tell you that first album, is probably one of the great rock and roll records I've heard in a long, long time. It's so exciting. It's so energized." He said, "Listen, can I ask you a favor? Can I ask you a question? Is it possible if I could get on the guest list?" And Andy goes, "Guest list?" He said, "Bloody hell, just show up." And so that night, at the Dingwalls, there's Robert Plant at the bar. There's Robin Hitchcock walking around. Then I'm introduced to Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols, and then all these people from NME, um, Melody Maker. All this press is there, and the place is jam packed full of people. And then all of a sudden, I'm walking around I'm walking through the place, and this guy, this black gentleman, comes over to me. He goes, "Hey, listen, are you Barrence Whitfield?" And I go, "Yeah, yeah." He says, "Well, I forgot his name at the moment, but he said, listen." I'm the superintendent of schools in Boston, and we're here in London. My entourage is here to visit some, elementary schools in the London area, and we saw your name, so we had to come to the show. And he says, "Hey, listen, I found them. Found all these people come over, and they're all from Boston. They're all from the education division of." I'm like sitting there, Plant's here, Robin Hitchcock's here. And this guy from Boston, he's a superintendent of schools. What's going on here? It was wild. And it was a wild night. I mean, we put on a great show, and people were
Yes.
just climbing over the little thing that Ding was wanting to touch me. And it was just a great experience. And having Plant there was just like blew my mind.
Well, absolutely. No pressure there, was there? Crikey. Yes, the hot potato, weren't you, at that stage in
Oh
life?
my God.
And this
My
was, yeah, well,
God.
I sort of say in the beginning, there was that, I mean, that was when I was, recording those shows, the radio shows, and then listening to them the next day, trying to sort of pick out those magic moments. I mean, there was a lot, I was obviously into indie pop, but there was also people like the Bundu Boys. There was, I mentioned
Oh my God.
the Ted
Bundy Boy.
Hawkins, and there was all the early hip hop stuff, as coupled with all the, other more, I suppose, straightforward sort of rock and pop and soul and Napalm Death. It was all put
Oh
into these shows, which was great because it appealed to my brain because it was
Well,
quite.
again, I have Kershaw to thank because he was playing all this stuff at his house, and he'd play Ted Hawkins, he'd play the Bundu Boys, he'd play the Four Brothers,
Oh God, yes.
he played this band, he'd play all these. He would play all these people, and he said, "Barrence, I'm listening to this. What do you think?" Blah blah. So, because I never stayed at a hotel when I was in London, I stayed at his house.
Nice.
So, so I got everything. I hung out with him. I ate with him. I go to a show with him. If there was a show happening, he said, "Barrence, come on, we're going to see." I remember one time it was Costello and Madness playing somewhere, and he went to interview Costello or somebody, I think, and it was just being introduced to all these people at the time. And I remember at the time coming over there. Remember a band called the House Martins?
Oh yes, absolutely. Happy Hour, which was
And they had at that time they had a hit called "The Caravan of Love,"
oh lovely. Yes,
which
a
was a
cappella.
which was an Isley Brothers song. And it was a big hit at the time. And I remember looking on TV, "Ladies and gentlemen, the House Martins," and they did that song. So I was being exposed to everybody from the Martins to the Smiths to all these English bands at the time, which and even being exposed to Dr. Feelgood or Nick Lowe, all the Stiff people.
Yes.
It was just a great time to be in the UK. There was just so much stuff going on, and plus there was also a lot of American bands coming over to put their mark on what I had already been. Because again, when I first went over, our local radio station, WBCN, followed me that first week when I came to the UK. I talked to them every day, and they'd always say, "What's going on over in the UK? What's going on? How you guys doing?" Blah blah, and I'd give them the whole kit and caboodle, everything that was going on day by day by day. So when I went back to Boston after that week, we had a gig at this place called the Channel, sold out because we had gone to everybody had known that we went to the UK and did exceptionally well.
Right. God damn. But then as the 80s finished and sort of packed up, a lot of bands break up at that point. Also, there's a sort of a shift in, I suppose, musical types or genres, really, because ecstasy comes along and there's the sudden interest in dance music. A lot of bands have a 5-year narrative. They
Right.
have that sort of the honeymoon period, the single, the album, the second album, possibly a third, and then it all slightly vanishes after 5 years, the classic moment.
Right.
And then there's a new wave of kids come in, and obviously there was the dance music, there was a bit of that kind of shoegazing, but you have, grunge starts to appear in Seattle, don't they, with the first album Bleach by Nirvana, and there's the Pixies and Throwing Muses on 4AD records. So how do you then navigate your 90s? Because then the music landscape has changed again, isn't it? So is your
Well,
first
it
album,
is.
I was going to say,
Oh,
then
the
because
90s.
yes, that your first album, is it Let's Lose It?
Let's
Was that?
Lose It, which was put out by a French label called New Rose, because the guy that ran New Rose, what's his Patrick Mattea, I think he was called. His name was. He loved Boston music. He was the one that brought over the Real Kids and Willie Loco Alexander, and he every time he'd come to Boston, he wanted to bring something back with him to France to put on his label, and we were one of the bands. So it shifted from England to France at the point because now the French were interested in the Savages and the
Yes.
Spanish was starting to get interested in the Savages. So it wasn't all. I mean, we'd still come over to England and play our gigs and whatever, but now it was being expanded even more to Holland, to to Germany, So we were starting to get a world view of music outside of England for the first time, and it was pretty fascinating. And we pretty much kept to the same kind of thing that we always was doing because now we were exposing our music to the French and the Spanish and the Italians, So the English already knew who we were. They already had their not their fill, but they already knew that we were part of the scene over there. So that was a really exciting moment doing that, and Kershaw was still prevalent with me, and we
Because
come over.
you do that record with New Rose, and the second one, Savage Tracks, with New Rose as well at this stage, isn't it? And
Yeah,
this takes you kind of the early 90s. Is
right.
has the lineup changed again at this point, or have you?
Not much. I mean, there was still the same band members. At that time. So and like I said, we were touring a lot too. So we were constantly over in Europe. So, and then we're starting to expand. Not only now, now you're going into Scandinavia, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland. So we were expanding our brand even more, and we had a really great booking agent out of England who hooked us up with a lot of the different countries agents and to book us into certain festivals, clubs, and stuff. So yeah, it really expanded uh,
Yes.
as the '90s, early part of the '90s.
And then you were on Demon Records for the album Ritual of the Savages. What was the kind of, how were you? Because you'd been doing music now for nearly, was it nearly 10 years, more? I mean,
'83, yeah, right.
I mean, normally people, I mean, have started to get a little bit kind of exhausted with it. What was it like going into the studio making that album for you?
Well, that started along with a guy named by the name of Ben Vaughn, who was a great writer, and he had his own band, Ben Don Combo. And we went in the studio, and it did change. The band changed differently a little bit. We had a different drummer and a keyboard player, and basically we were kind of like in the vein of. You ever heard of a band called NRBQ?
No, my God, I should.
Oh,
NR, what's
you
that?
got to listen.
NR.
NRBQ, which is New Rhythm and Blues Quartet.
Oh,
You've got to hear these guys. They were fantastic. They basically they were all over the place. They'd play like rock and roll. The next thing you know, they'd be playing something from Sun Ra, and then they'll play some popular tune from the 20s. And but they were really good. They were what you call a musicians band. All the musicians praised them. So
right.
yeah, you should listen to some of their stuff. They were really good. Um, Al Anderson, Joyce Mamato, and who was yeah. Their early records are really good, but yeah, listen to some of their stuff because they were in the vein of rhythm and blues, and they sometimes they'll play jazz because they'll have horn players play with them. So we were in that kind of vein of the what they were doing, and going and doing the ritual. We had. Uh, I started getting into a little bit of a singer songwriter, being exposed to this guy named Tom Russell, who was a great singer songwriter out of California, who moved to New York to live for a little while, and I started getting a little bit more. I won't say sophisticated, but more. I don't know what's the word can I put? Just because we had been so worldly drawing and stuff, and I was starting to listen to much more music than just say the early rock and roll records and stuff like that. So I was expanding my musical um uh just ambitions a little bit more, and
Yes.
hanging out with Kershaw. He's playing me all this stuff. I'm going, oh my God, it's just like he's a world view of the music that I was listening at his house. So I usually would show up in England, or like I'll have a couple of days off. I go to his house, and there'll be a stack of records. He said, "I've been waiting for you, Barrence. You got to hear this," So you know.
Did he ever play Jason and the? Is it Sorts? He
Oh
was.
yeah, Jason's and the Scorchers. Yeah, I played with them, and
Yes, I remember he was obsessed with them. Actually, I think it
yeah,
was.
he was really obsessed. And then he got obsessed with REM for a little
Right.
bit.
Yes, that
He
that
got
that
he,
period.
he definitely got obsessed with REM. So he played a lot of their stuff, and
Yes. I don't
but
know.
he was
Martin Stevenson and the Dainties, I think, was another, wasn't he?
oh
And then,
yeah,
and then there's a lot of kind of African music. He sort of, from memory, he slightly went into world, a lot of different parts of the world. I think he expanded out of the UK,
yeah.
didn't he, at
I
that
remember
stage?
him one time inviting me. He says, "Barrence, I want you to come with me to Zimbabwe." And I go, "Really?" He said, "You got to see the music that's going on there." He said, I said, "What do I have to do?" He said, "Oh, you got to get your shots and all this stuff, and you got to do all this stuff to." And I wanted to go. I really did, because I was really fascinated with the whole thing, but uh, I, j- I just didn't. The other stuff was coming around, and I had other obligations that I had to.
Yes. So
But I
that,
would have gone with him in a minute.
yeah, no, Zimbabwe's like, yeah, no, there was always I know it was a great time because there was the various labels, weren't there? I remember there was Stearns Records,
Stern,
Earthworks Records.
he'd always take me to Stern's Records, which was right down the street from the BBC.
Yeah, and then on the reggae front there was Greensleeves and
Yeah,
God, no,
and when he and also
Trojan Records. Yeah, that was the one.
Trojan Records, he play a lot of reggae, dub
Gregory
stuff.
Isaacs. Yeah, Orchestras
And then I
Cabinet.
started going with him to clubs because he would DJ. So he'd bring his records and he'd DJ and he'd play all this, like all the world music, and then he'd mix it in with the rock and whatever. And he was having a good time. And I'm like sitting there going, I, I can't believe it. And then I go other parts of England. They said, you're a good friend of Andy Kershaw's, aren't you? And I go, yes, I'm to the hip with him.
Nice. So when after that album came out, Ritual, did the band, what happens with you and the band at that stage then? Do you
And
tour and
that's
then?
it. Yeah, at that stage, we kind of broke up after that album. It just, everybody went their own separate ways, and then I basically, again, kept doing what I did the most, and I kept coming over to Europe to and I was almost like the Chuck Berry. I get pick up bands, really good bands, and they would learn my material because at that point I had a lot of material to work with in order to tour. So
Yes.
I could come over and rehearse with a band, and they learn my repertoire, and we'd go around to other parts of the world playing stuff. So
So
that's how I.
really, yeah, there was. I suppose people like Geno Washington was like that, wasn't he? It was Geno
Mhm.
Washington and whoever. A bit like the line from Marky Smith, wasn't it? If it was Marky Smith and your granny on bongos, that was the fool, wasn't it? Really?
Oh my goodness! I got to play with him too. It was a festival in Bath, and it was Geno Washington and Georgie Fame.
Nice, a
It
classic
was
line.
that was the, I said I can't believe I'm in the same area with Georgie Fame and Geno Washington. It was just, being from the United States, those kind of artists, like, you would never ever think that you're ever going to meet these guys, because you're over in the United States, and they're British, and they're from the '60s and stuff. You're never going to meet these guys. Here I am in the room, and there they are, and I'm like going, oh my God, here I am.
Nice. Yes, we used to love seeing Gino. He was such a star, wasn't he? Really, never
Yeah.
never aged, did he? He was quite
No, man, that guy.
amazing. He's had
There's a
to.
there's a there's a saying here when it comes to black people aging. We say black don't crack.
Well, I'll write that down. Excellent. So you're just really rocking it, and then sort of as you navigate into the next decade, we have the millennium, and the great sort of fear of that planes were going to drop out of the sky and it was all going to end, and it didn't on New Year's Day. Well, how do you then navigate your next kind of the 2000s, the O years?
Well, the early years, I basically going to I was doing a lot of stuff. I mean, I was still coming over to Europe, doing, having backup bands back me up, more or less in Scandinavia and Sweden, Finland, and also Switzerland and all. So I was still coming over there doing music. And then, 2000s were, it wasn't slow, but like I said, I kept myself going without a band being over here. And
Yes.
then about 2009,
Was
I started talking with Peter again.
Peter. So was Peter had done the family and was beginning to get excited again about sort of
Yeah, he got
returning?
excited about playing again because he said you've been doing it for the longest time, so you had been still out there doing it. So
Yes.
he got the bug again because he started doing some reunion shows with the Liars uh,
Right.
in Europe and stuff. So he got the bug again. So me and Phil Lenker, we flew out to his home in New Mexico in Taos.
Nice. God, I've actually even been there. My God.
Yeah, nice little city, little
Nice
town.
climate.
Oh
Nice,
my
nice
God!
architecture.
Oh, very
Yes.
nice architecture. So we went to his house, and we started talking about. And this is after not seeing him for about 26 years.
Yes, there's a lot to catch up, isn't there?
So it was a lot to catch up, and we thought we sat there and we thought, well, we can do it again. So what? We're almost hitting 60. So what? So
Yes,
we
it's
just got, yeah, we got the energy back going, and we found a couple other guys to play, and it was almost, when we started hitting that first note, it was like it had never left our bodies.
right. So this was it. This is like the Spinal Tap Mark II. It was
Oh,
there.
Mark II, yeah, you're right. And we started, doing some tunes, and putting music together for the next project. But we didn't have a record label, and I didn't know if anybody was really interested in the States to do anything. So I had a friend of mine who worked for a label in Madrid called Munster Records.
Munster, yes, great label. Is this the Pasta Brothers?
Hmm. And so there was a guy that worked there who was a big fan, and I'd been doing some stuff in Spain anyway, and so I texted him. I mean, I emailed him, and I said, "Listen, the Savages are getting back together again after all these years. We're just wondering if you are interested in putting an album out." Uh, and I just emailed him. Within 3 days, he emailed me back. He said, "We'd be honored."
Right. This is what you want to hear, isn't it?
Exactly what I want to hear. So they were excited. We got together. We put together the record called Savage Tracks. No, that's was
Excellent.
it. No. Was it Savage Tracks? No, it
Yes,
was.
it was. I think it was.
Yeah, it was. It was.
No, Savage Kings.
Yeah, Savage Kings. That's what it is.
Sorry, that was.
And so we put that record together, and then a friend of his put it out in the United States out of a record store out of Cincinnati, because that's Peter grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, which we were playing a lot at the time. So, but he put it out in Spain. It revitalized the band, and then we got hooked up with a label. We wanted to do a second album, but we got hooked up with a label called Bloodshot Records out of Chicago.
My God, this is good, isn't it? This is
Yeah,
where it's gone. You're feeling like the gods are with you now, aren't you?
it just started to really reform again and everything. And so they were interested, and come to find out that the vice president of the label used to go to school here in Boston at a university called Tufts, and he used to follow us. And so he was excited. He said, "We've got to put this record out." So, and then all of a sudden, we're in the midst of doing that, and then we get an email from uh, Representative Jules Holland,
This is
who
good, isn't it? This,
yeah, which I
this,
met Jules some years ago. When he was with Squeeze and during the early Savages coming to the UK, and he said, "Listen, I hear you've got a new record coming out. We'd like to have you on the television program." And so the record label went nuts. They said, "Jules Holland, we've got to do it. You're going to do it. We're going to fly you over there, and we'll bring the vice president at the time said, I'll go with you." And we did the Jules Holland show, and it was unbelievable. And on that show was the Pixies, Janelle Monáe, this band called Churches,
nice.
Tony Joe White.
Oh, that's a good one, isn't it? You must have. Did you feel that? Because often I think we all take it as a fan, we take it all a little bit for granted with a band. As I mentioned, the 5 year, almost 3 albums, if you're lucky. It's often by the third album, the fan is getting a little bit like, oh well, I've heard enough now. And there was a few bands like the Mighty Lemon Drops, and the
Oh
member
yeah,
said nobody wanted the sixth album of the Mighty Lemon Drops, and it was like, and it was a bit like, yeah, you're right. Actually, we didn't really, did we? But then the passing of time, and you're thinking, actually, because as the fan, you also need to get a house together, possibly career or some sort of money together, and things. Your priorities start to sort of change, don't they? From worried about that kind of album, looking forward to it, going to the record store, getting it, playing it. You don't have that luxury of time anymore, being able to spend so much listening to it so religiously, going, oh my God, those
right,
lyrics, they mean they're singing them just for me, and all that malarkey, which is lovely to remember it. But you realise actually you just can't do it when you're getting a bit older. But then with a bit of time later on, when a band sometimes reforms and comes back, and then brings out new albums, plays the old stuff, you think, oh yes, I'll definitely, I'll be interested in them again. I just, that 5 years is almost like a very overly committed relationship, isn't it? Where you fall out and over someone sort of took the milk from the fridge and you said, that's it, the friendship's over, we'll never speak again. And then 10 years later, you think, oh, I can't believe what we fell out about. And,
Well, I think with this kind of music that we play, it's universal. I mean, you can go anywhere and play this kind of music, and people will respond due to the fact it's rock and roll.
It's rock and roll. It is. I know Lemmy used to say on Motorhead, he used to come to the mic, didn't he, at the beginning with a fag, and he said, we're Motorhead, and we play rock and roll, and spat his fag out and went into it. And that's all there is, isn't it? It is. That's it. Because Little Richard and David Bowie, no, David Bowie and Lemmy were born in the same year, and they both said their main person was Little Richard. That was it. I got there in the end, didn't I? But that was, and David Bowie got a signed picture of Little Richard, which he kept all through his life, which was being stuck together with sellotape when it got broke slightly. And they was always that. And then there was Elvis and Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry and all these guys. But it was always Little Richard because he had the flamboyance in he.
Well, I can truthfully say that I got the chance to meet Little Richard in 1987, I think. Yeah, it was 87. It was in Belgium, and we were playing we had just got there. We were going to do a show the next night, and the promoter called us up at the hotel and said, okay, well, everything's set. Sound check is going to be at this time, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, and now Little Richard. We go, well, what about Little Richard? Well, he's in town. He's doing a show, a big, I guess, diamond show that they brought him in to do. And we've asked the promoters that you were a big fan of his and blah, blah, and you would love to meet him. So we hooked it up where tomorrow morning you're going to go over and meet Little Richard. And we go, what? And my manager, he starts going, he's a maniac. He might go crazy. I said, shut up. We're going over. What time do you want us to go? 11 o'clock. So 11 o'clock that next day, next thing you know, I walk in the room and there's Little Richard ranting and raving at the journalist and stuff, doing his Little Richard thing. So they left, and we got to hang out with him for an hour.
Oh my God.
And
That
we
must be.
talked and had a wonderful time. I still have the picture of me and him cheek to cheek. Black and
Yes.
white picture. It's a picture that'll never leave my house, that's for sure.
No, forget social distancing on that one. You just want to get
I
you want to
wanted to
get
get,
close.
yeah, he wanted to get close to me too, but it was just a great, unbelievable thing. And actually, for my 70th birthday this year, my guitar player, who at the time, Milt Reeder, he was in the Savages at the time, he gave me a picture of it's a double back-to-back picture. It's on one side, it's us and Little Richard, and on the left side, it's a picture of the Beatles with Little Richard. And I
Right.
went, oh my God. And I have it up there on my thing right now. It's a picture. That's another picture I'll always keep because he was a huge Beatle fan, Milt. Loved the Beatles. So the connection of us with Little Richard and the Beatles with Little Richard was just it was just like, oh, this was a dream come true.
Well, yes. I mean, nice. That is special times actually. So then, when you're on Bloodshot Records now, and you do 3 albums in quite short succession, don't you? 13,
Right.
15, and 18. So obviously, things are really sort of working again. Are you back to that same sort of work rate that you were back in the 80s and 90s at this stage?
Well, at this stage, probably I could say that we probably are at the end of that now because we're doing one more show next year It's a Little Steven's Underground. Um,
Oh, Stevie.
yeah, we're doing his boat cruise out of Miami
Oh,
into
brilliant. You're on a
Mexico.
cruise.
Yeah,
Is this your
4-day cruise.
oh, the 4 day. I love those cruises.
I know. So this should be it should be fun. But I think we've we've gone through a lot in the last few years, and we're getting older, of course. And so the touring is not as torrid as it once was, or we can deal with. So I just think that I think we've done. Remember, we put this thing together in 1983. Then we were separate from us for 26 years, then got back for another 10 years. I think we've proved that we've done enough. We've done what we can as a band, as a music entity, to put music out there and tour and play for people and stuff. So I kind of think this is probably the end of that of the trilogy of the Savages. I think I still go on, I mean, because I'm who I am. I'm a musician. That's what I do, and I'll always do it. I'm like the old blues guys. We'll do it till we
Yes.
drop dead. So it's and now I'm involved with this band. Three of the guys are from the UK. The band's called MFC Chicken.
That's God, and what names they rejected on that one.
Well, let's put it this way: they're a band that they dress up a little like Colonel Sanders,
Oh,
eyes and everything, and they do their moniker. They do nothing but chicken songs.
right. There you go. It's got to be done. It's someone's got to do it, haven't they?
So
So how
it's
did you get up? How did you find these guys? Or did
it
they
was
find you? Didn't they?
well, yeah. Well, they were always. I think they were. They always heard of me, and they've been fans for many years because through my association with the rockabilly scene and rock and roll scene, they've always been like big fans and respected of me. So, and I have a saxophone player um, that he's from Canada. He's from Toronto, but he's been living in Spain for some years now. His name is Spencer Evoy, and he's the one that's been playing with MFC Chicken for a while. So he just introduced me to and those guys said, Barrence Whitfield, we'd love to play with Barrence Whitfield. So we finally
So they're basically going to be your backing band. They're going to be
yeah, on certain shows when they're free, because they have a busy schedule themselves doing their own stuff. But we talked about it the last year or so about putting some stuff together, and actually went into the studio when I was in Spain last month, and we recorded three tunes for a single 45 EP of three songs that we're gonna put out. So.
yes. Because
So
that I was going to say
well, go ahead.
that yeah. Because your last album, Glory, that came out on the Spanish label as well, but that was with Peter Greenberg, wasn't
That was
it? So,
with Peter Greenberg, and that's probably the last record probably you'll see of us. And Spencer's on that record, the saxophone
oh
player,
yes, my
along
God.
with some with our other saxophone player, Tom Quartuli. So, but we did that in Valencia because uh, going over to Spain all these years, and it's great when you go to Spain because every time I go over there, I play in front of sellout crowds.
Well, I can see. Yes.
It's unbelievable.
You are royalty. You are sort of rock and pop royalty over there, aren't you? They are. It's funny actually. In the UK, there's a couple of bands who, they can't get arrested in the UK or even get 50 people to see them, but they're either big in Italy or they're big in Spain, or France. I mean, they're treated with like wow, and so it's interesting. And Lemmy from Motorhead was always saying that it was the German audience that kept the band going when no one else wanted to know them. It was those
Hmm.
fallow years. He said the audience were just so loyal. They'd buy you, 5 CDs, a couple of T-shirts. He was just thinking, thank you, thank you. We may be able to eat next month, so well done. But it comes through, doesn't it?
It
Really?
comes through. No matter where you go, there's always going to be a crowd or a scene that will embrace you. You think, everyone says, Barrence, when you go over to Europe, everybody knows you. You're much bigger over there than you are in the States. And I go, well, that's because in Europe, no matter where you go, where it's be UK, France, Spain, where they respect and and they really love American rock and roll. No matter where you go. I mean, I've watched many documentaries in England on blues coming to the UK, or American rock and roll, and I've talked to many people through the years in the UK about it, you know to the fact that um especially in the UK, where they wanted to know what the blues was all about. They didn't know. They said, "What is this about the full moon rising or the creek runs high? And what is this fascination with this music?" And they learned about it. They had the artist come over, showed them what it was, and the next thing you know, you got the Rolling Stones, you got
I
the
know.
Yardbirds, you got
That's
so it's the appreciation of American music roots, no matter you know forget about the political uh atmosphere in the world today. Music comes through mightily than any politics that I ever know, because
yes.
that's the one thing we all have in common. We all have this in common. We can all sit down and have a good time with it, talk about it, to have different opinions on it, but it's never opinions that would damage or hurt anybody.
No, no, this is absolutely true. My God, do we need it? Yeah, it's like, you talk about the blues. I always remember that lovely bit of Brian Jones introducing someone like BB King,
It was Holland Wolf.
and it was Harlan Wolf. Well, remember, and he's sort of shut up and let's play them, and he,
Yeah,
and
let's shut
Harlan
up
Wolf,
and sit down and listen to this guy.
yes,
And
and it
and
was
he
a
had
bit
this
like,
big grin on his face, like, this is the greatest thing that could happen in my life, to be in front of this man, to watch him sing How Many More Years. And that's how it is, man. And, when they came over to America, they didn't want to, none of them ever said, oh, we would love to meet the president of the United States, or we want to see about Muddy Waters. We want to
yes.
see Chuck Berry. We want to see Little Richard. These are our heroes. These are the people that we admire. So,
And it's also interesting. I mean, in the 80s, and I'm sure, obviously, in the 60s, that people got into the beat generation, listening to reading "On the Road" by Jack Kerouac, and he mentions all the bebop, jazz musicians, and blues. And again, when you're young and want to sort of immerse yourself in culture, you have to go to the record library because you couldn't stream it back in those days, and get these records and play them, and want to understand, what it was all about, just because it was kind of interesting. It's a bit like meeting the devil at the crossroads. You love that story, don't we? We want to,
oh
you want to
yeah,
sell your soul to the devil, but it's all, it's all part of the kind of rich history of music, and you kind of keep wanting to get to the source of it, because you hear, like Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton mention these blues guys, so you want to hear what they listen to, and the same with Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck and people. So it's sort of, yeah, it's lovely when you keep making these little connections from one sort of source to another, and then you get the soul music, because I was obsessed with Jackie Wilson in the 80s. There was a
oh,
particular compilation that came out which was great, and then you had the Atlantic box set with people, the Temptations and various, and the Kent record label, which is an Ace record label that we had, that again Kershaw but also John Peel used to always throw in those kind of artists that
oh
they
my
weren't the
God!
obvious people, but they were brilliant. And then you got those Northern Soul collections and compilations.
Like Dave Gosden.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Dave
Gee,
Gosden, he's the man. He wanted that was his music, and he loved that. I'll always remember being in the UK during the Christmas holidays, when that Jackie Wilson record "Reet Petite" went
yes.
number one, and on it was on one of the newspapers. It said, "Dead Man reaches number one,"
Bit grim. But
and
yes,
I'm
okay.
going, okay. But they acknowledge the fact that Jackie Wilson, here's a guy who, fabulous singer, fabulous performer, met some bad times later on in his life. He didn't even live past to 50 actually. And here's a guy who never ever thought that he'd have a number one hit back in this was like in the 80s. And that
Yes.
Petite was number one. And I was over there and that was the big thing, you know. It was like, and it was because of a marination cartoon type of thing they did on him. Remember?
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, no, it was good.
Yeah.
I just remember. I don't know where I got it. A particular collection that he did. I can't remember if it was on the Kent record label, but it was just every song was just extraordinary, and it was just they weren't the obvious hits actually, but it was the sound. It was that almost like that wall of sound that Phil Spector had sort of got in the 60s as well. But yeah, I mean, music is incredible, and I can understand why one can dedicate one's life to it all. But going forward, then you've got this EP with the
MFC
MFC
Chicken.
Chickens, which is coming out. You've got Little Richie, Little Stevie, the Cruise. The which is going to be very exciting, and then it's just going to be playing shows in Boston and around.
Well, I've got a few other projects
Oh, how
looming.
exciting!
One of them is well, both of them are black artists. One of them is a country record, which has been that was sanctioned for me to do by the Country Music Hall of Fame on a guy named Stoney Edwards, a black country artist from the '70s who was. If you close your eyes, he sounds like Merle Haggard, and but
Ah,
he's a fabulous, fabulous artist who didn't get as big as you would think because of the Nashville and being black in country music is not an easy thing. You know, there's not very many, but I always wanted to do a compilation of things he did, and the Country Music Hall of Fame was very happy to oblige with saying, "Sure, we would love to have you do something like that because my name is in the Country Music Hall of Fame because I did a project for them in '97." Of box set of they put a box set out of every it was no 99, I'm sorry, a box set of all black artists doing country music, whether it be the Supremes or DeFord Bailey or any one of any soul artists or whatever.
yeah.
And they put out a box set, a CD box set, and they just celebrated last year the 20th anniversary of it. So I went down and performed with a friend of mine who's producing the record, and we did a few songs at this event, which it was all black artists, including a guy by the name of Darius Rucker from Hootie and the Blowfish.
Oh, yes.
So we did that. So they were very interested in that project. So I've done my vocals. So we're just finishing off some overdubs and stuff, and then I'm doing another project with a museum right in the town next to me called Salem, as you might have heard of, and called the Peabody Essex Museum. And we're putting together a little show on a guy named Slim Gaillard, who actually lived in the UK for a little while in the '80s. The guy who did Flatfoot Flugie with the Floyd, and Atomic Cocktail, and he
And
was fabulous.
I think he's one of the people that is mentioned in On the Road, actually, Slim
He
Galliard.
is mentioned on the road. Jack Kerouac mentions his name.
Yes, and Cabaway.
But he also was in a movie that was put out back in the '80s called Absolute Beginners.
Oh, yes, yes, Julian Temple, David Bowie, various, and Patsy
He's in
someone.
the movie. He does the song called Selling Out. Selling,
Right. He's one hip cat, isn't he?
yeah, One Hip Cat. So he lived in the UK for a little while.
He did. And I
Yeah,
just
and he
see
did,
that.
and he also did I think a documentary while he was over there too. So he was kind of well known at the time, to be
Well, I
over
would
there.
imagine he was one sharp dressing dude, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he was one of the hippest guys you'll ever want to know. So I'm putting together a little show, kind of to explain his music, and I've got the band which I called Barrence Whitfield in the Jive Session 5.
Nice. That it says what it does in the tin, doesn't it? It's like
Yeah.
that's what you need.
So I'm doing a project on him. So and also I did a project in 2019 on Sun Ra. I did a Sun Ra album, which had some tunes, and we're thinking of doing a second one next year. So Barrence Whitfield is putting his hand into everything he possibly can,
You got to be done, haven't
while
you?
while I'm here on this planet.
Well, yes, absolutely. Every as you get older, every decade is like, let's make this one count.
Well, you just want to keep yourself energized, and people go, well, he's still out there doing it. He's not like, sitting back and going, well, this is it. I can't do it anymore, or I can't. I want to do it with as much energy as I possibly can because I love it.
Yes, well, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what keeps you young, isn't it, really? That kind of
For sure.
motivation to sort of rock up and perform. And, I think in those moments, you forget about any of your ailments, any niggles, any emotional stuff, because you just got to be focused. And actually, you realize actually how important that is to be able to clear your brain like that and to sort of ignore pain, potentially physical pain as well. So
Yeah.
it's always
And
good.
also just dissect yourself away from all the crap that's going on in the
So
world.
it's so important. So, I know. But talking of exciting things, did I see a cat jump on your lap earlier?
Yeah, that was one of my cats. That was Phyllis,
Oh,
alias
right. Well,
Moo.
I have to say, I say little, I'm obsessed with cats. I'm a cat person. I don't mind dogs,
Oh,
but
really?
it is cats that I think are brilliant because you have to work at them, don't you? You can't just take them for granted. And you have this,
Well, they're good emotional support people too. They're always there when you need them. Because
they,
that's all they know is love.
they do, and they trust you and they do little paddy paws. So, how
Patty
many cats have you
balls.
got?
Oh yeah, two. I have two of them. We have two of them, a male and a female. One's my wife named them after her late parents, Edward and Phyllis.
Beautiful, Edward
But
and
I
Phil.
gave them nicknames. Edward, I call him Mister Wee Wee,
Nice, because he's got
and
reputation.
I call Phyllis Moo Moo.
Nice.
And they
Oh,
respond to those names, so it's just like, I
uh,
mean, she'll call them one thing, and all I have to say is moo moo, and she likes to talk too, so she'll come over.
well, I know it's very. I know those moments. They have to decide if they want to come and sort of do your paddy paws on you and stuff. So
Most
and
of the
you
time.
and you feel so honoured as well. You think, thank you for doing that.
Well,
And
they're indoor cats too, so they don't go outside. So they're always here. They're always around. Either they're doing a little mischief, or they're right now in the bedroom with my wife because they love her to death. They'll follow her anywhere. She'll get out of the bed and they'll follow her to the kitchen. They'll follow her this way. They'll follow, So they're
she's the big cat, isn't she?
she's the big cat, right? You got that right.
Oh, this is magic. Well, look, I'll let you. Well, thank you for your Sunday morning and my brilliant ability not to work out the time difference. And but anyway, we got there in the end. And yes, and if you want, I can always send you a link of this as well, and you can always put it on any of your social media pages because people are always, as you can imagine, are getting curious about things. I mean, the 80s now. When I first started doing this show, there wasn't that much interest. I mean, the 80s had been told in a very mainstream way. And then in the last 5 or 6 years, there's like loads of books people have written, films, documentaries, even exhibitions are coming out. And it's all, yes, the subculture of the 80s, because I think people are going, no, my 80s wasn't just this, and this, which was all mainstream. It was all the other bits that were going on. And obviously, there's a curiosity that people have started to pick up
Well,
on.
well, you forget about that's 40 years ago
That's
now.
only 40 years. I know, it makes you
40
think.
years ago. So I mean, you think about it, we think about it as if it was yesterday.
This is just,
But
I know.
the
Well,
youth,
when you're getting old, because you have to count decades, you think, oh, it's 20 years, and you go, oh shit, it's 40, isn't it? It's not 20.
oh Yeah,
You have to
man.
count it on your fingers. I realized there was a moment in my life where everything was 10 or 20 years, and it's like, no, David, it wasn't. It's 40 or 50.
And there was so much, everything, especially with the arts, there was just so much stuff going on, and so many things as far as music styles. I mean, you had everybody from Rock Pile doing their rock and roll thing. You had, the Smiths. You had, I mean, out of the 70s comes into the 80s style culture, style council with then
Yes.
Paul Weller, and then you had all of these bands coming out doing their own thing, whether it be dance, and we mustn't forget about hip hop,
Well,
because
I know, yes, because I was going to say when you were reeling off, because John Peel did, it was when he played Public Enemy or he played LL Cool J, or he had all these rap artists like Roxy Shante or The Real Roxanne. So he had these albums on was it Street Sounds Records? Morgan Khan used to bring them out. And it was like African Bambaataa, and then there was
oh yeah,
Grandmaster Guy and Master Flash, The Furious
MS
Five.
Fast.
And yeah, I mean, it was just like, oh my God. Yeah.
And I think with hip hop, that's the last kind of music style that has flourished from then till now. I mean, there hasn't been really much of anything to surpass that, due to the fact that it's in everything. It's in commercials. It's in this. It's in that. That's the last. I mean, it's like the blues. It's like the jazz. It's like uh, punk. It's like those idioms of rock music, or art music that has survived. They still exist, and there's the youth of today who they've got their own thing, which is probably maybe milk toast to what was going on back when we were growing up and stuff like
Yes.
that. But they find a way of that type of history, that type of legacy must be learned, and it also must continue, because we tend to forget, especially when we get young. You say, "Oh, that's my grandfather's music," or "That's my grandmother's music," but we tend to forget, if it wasn't for the roots of these types of music, like I always say, if it wasn't for rock and roll, if it wasn't for rhythm and blues, uh, jazz, gospel, it wouldn't there would never been any Elvis, Beatles, or the Rolling Stones.
No, as Joe Strummer once said. Yeah,
Yeah, he said it in one song, didn't he?
he, he
In
said,
1977.
yes, this is true. I know, yes, absolutely. But I mean, that's why it's always nice. I mean, it's interesting because when I was growing up, I only had to go back a little way to start to get to that early point or a bit further. But, now there's so many decades. But I'm sure, young people do, because there's always that curiosity, and you still get that feeling sometimes when you hear a record and think, oh my God, this is amazing. Who is it? And there is just,
but
over the decades, has been amazing.
but
We're
we
so
have but I must say, we have a problem here in America today, that a lot of this history is trying to be suppressed by the beings who are running the show today, because they believe that that type of history affects the way they want to run the world. And this is why youth of today must prevail to keep that history alive, because without it, they're going to end up, I mean, God knows what will happen in the next 20 to 30 years,
yes.
when we're gone. So it's very important. I think it's very important to sustain this in any which way, form, whether it's through talking to you on a podcast, or in a museum, or, I mean, because radio isn't what it was, what it used to be. So we can't confide in radio too much, but the history of it all should be preserved no matter what.
Absolutely. No, and we'll keep it rocking. I'm sure. I mean, in the 50s, there would have been McCarthy, and that would have been like, so society can and hopefully will navigate these moments. But it's always kind of interesting when you sort of realize, this is a bit unpleasant. Let's go back to being liberals again.
Well, let's go back to having fun.
I'm being nice and kind. Yeah. I know. It's like, can we just anyway? You get But look, I'll let you rock on. But thank you ever so much for your time. It's been amazing and incredible. And I'm really excited to hear your new projects as
Well,
well as
David,
playing your classic.
let's stay in touch, please. I love talking to you, and it's always good to talk to a man of music, and especially someone from the UK, where uh, for me it really not only started, but it also embellished my worldly attributes in my music career. So thank you for
Yes.
your time.
Well, no, thank you for yours. Look, I'll let you rock on, but have a lovely breakfast. Take care and love to your cats as well.
Oh, real. Cheers.
Cheers. See you later.
See you
Bye.
later. Bye bye.
And that, dear listener, is the end of the interview. Massive thank you to Barrence Whitfield, or Barry White, as he was born with that name. This has been the C86 show, David Eastaugh. So if you want to contact me, you can on any of those social media platform sites. Just do C86 show, David Eastaugh. And all these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.